If you have enough insulin in the body and the blood sugar is high, there is a problem here.
Well, we've been hearing the words insulin resistance of late.
Exactly. Why did they come up with that terminology? Not only that, they got it into medical textbooks so that everybody in the world will believe in it.
Well, the concept, as explained, would be the cells are refusing to accept the glucose regardless of the fact that there's insulin ringing the doorbell.
Okay. Which is the explanation.
Right. But is it the fact?
It is not the fact.
Aha.
Think about it. There are 50 hormones in the body, more
Right.
than 50. Why should the cells resist insulin?
No, they would have to be somehow the cell membrane would have to be broken. That's just not logical, is it?
It is not, because and they have no clue why it happens.
Good day, everyone. This is Martin Pytela for Life Enthusiast podcast. And with me today, an interesting story, I must tell you, Dr. John Poothullil. And Dr. John has brought us a lot of wonderful insights. I think it would be best if I let him tell the story. But what you want to know is that there are specific issues that we all should understand, and they are metabolic, and they are the flow, the stagnation of the body, the metabolic inputs, and all of that. And we'll dive into many angles, not just one, because, well, let's just start with that. Dr. John, welcome.
Mr. Pytela, thank you for having me. And I grew up, shall I give you a little bit background?
Absolutely. I think it's relevant. I think it's super relevant to all of us.
I grew up in India, in the state of Kerala. I went to medical school there. And in 1969, I went to Scotland to do a year of internship.
Yeah.
1970, I came to the United States, did residency and fellowship.
Yeah.
I practiced in the state of Texas for over 30 years.
Yeah.
And during that time, I had questions for which I could not find answers in medical textbooks. So I came up with my own, just like you did for your own talk.
Exactly. You know, isn't it ironic that you think that the Western medicine, as we have it, is the best thing going, but the deeper you look, the more it becomes obvious that the older sciences had better answers when it comes to chronic health. We're so exceedingly good at fixing disasters, but we are so bad at preventing them.
Exactly. That's the best way to look at it. The only way we can save medical dollars, Medicare and Medicaid, is through prevention. But
Indeed.
most of the practice is driven by people with profit motive to treat.
Of course. Well, yeah, I remember the line, heal a patient, lose a customer.
Right. Okay. Coming back to my story, in about mid-40s, I noticed that I'm gaining weight in the winter months to lose it in summer and fall. But mid-50s, I found that what I gained is not going away.
Right.
It is tending to stay on. So I said, I'm eating the same, I'm exercising the same. Why am I gaining weight?
Right.
And I looked at the literature. He said, oh, diet and exercise, diet and exercise. What does that mean? Each person, we all come from different backgrounds. Our food is different, our food habits are different, the way we shop, the way we cook, the way we eat are all different. So the generic term food and exercise or diet and exercise has no meaning at individual level.
Right. Yeah. Too general.
To general. So I started, okay, let me start from the beginning. You cannot gain weight unless you eat.
Right. Yeah. There's something to the calories in, calories out model.
Right. So the first question is, what is the signal that makes you have is the sensation of hunger?
That's a beautiful thing. Yes. I think there's not enough conversation about that. And I think you're onto something really important, right?
Right.
What
Well,
what causes me to open the bag and take more and take
right.
another one and take another one?
Right. But my question is even more fundamental. What makes you that initially, because you cannot predict when you are going to be hungry.
Okay.
So, what is it that the brain gets? What information from where before the brain creates the sensation of hunger? And it is not fixed. The best way to look at it is look at a toddler, 2 to 6 years of age, or even a baby. The baby doesn't feel hunger on a timeline.
Right. Yeah,
It
it's
is
not on the clock. Definitely
it
that.
is it is variable. So how does the baby's brain know, the child's brain know when to create the sensation of hunger?
Well, I heard that it was hormonal, is it not?
Well, who is releasing the hormone?
All right. That I
Or-
don't know. Somebody
Right.
up there, pituitary, maybe?
We, based on what? Why is it not releasing hormone all the time?
All right. Well, let's see if you have found the answer yet. Tell me.
That is one. The second is when you start eating, you don't always eat the same volume of food. A baby doesn't drink the same volume of milk each time, sometimes 2 ounces, sometimes 8 ounces, sometimes. So if the baby has the stomach capacity of 8 ounces, how can the baby be satisfied at 2 ounces or three?
Yes.
So what is the signal that tells the brain, okay, you had enough?
All right.
And the third is 2 to 3 hours or maybe 4 hours after you take a meal, if you take your blood cholesterol, blood sugar level is high, fatty acid level is high, amino acid, cholesterol, everything gets high. But next morning, if you take the supper at 6 o'clock, by next morning, all have come down to the baseline. Where did it go? Where did they go? We have been resting and sleeping. What happened to the nutrients?
Right. And why is it that some people are waking up with blood glucose at 80 and others at 120?
Exactly. So these are the questions I started with, and I could not find specific answers.
All right.
So where do you want me to start?
Well, most Americans would like to know exactly the answer right now.
Which of these three, the hunger, satiation, or the nutrient? Let me start with the nutrients.
I think so. I think that's best we should start is at the back.
Okay. So can I ask what did you eat for supper last evening?
Myself,
Uh-huh.
I had 2 chicken wings and a salad and about half a cup of rice.
Okay. That's a very balanced meal. What time did you eat?
7:30.
7:30. By 11:30, all the food have been digested. The
Yep.
rice will be absorbed as glucose because it's complex carbohydrate. The salad will have amino acids, little bit of glucose, little bit of fatty acid.
Right.
The chicken will be digested and absorbed as fatty acid and cholesterol. When the blood sugar level goes up by about 10:30, 11, the pancreas will release insulin.
Yes.
So insulin will go with amino acid, fatty acid, glucose, and cholesterol to every cell in the body. It is insulin that knocks on the door to let the cell know there is outside, nutrients outside.
Yeah.
It's similar to when somebody comes to your home or apartment, you know there is somebody there when they knock on the door or ring the doorbell. Most people don't know that glucose cannot ring the bell.
It's the insulin that rings the bell.
It is insulin that, exactly, it is insulin that rings the bell. This is why in children with type 1 diabetes, there is plenty of glucose outside, but the cell inside is starving.
Right.
And these children used to die by age 10 until 100 years ago, two researchers in Canada identified insulin
Yes,
as the hormone.
indeed.
And the person who treated the maximum number of children with type 2 diabetes was Elliot Jocelyn of Boston. And they have still a hospital there, Jocelyn Clinic,
Right.
named after him. So he was so impressed by the action of insulin in bringing blood sugar down. He trained nurses to go out into the community and give insulin to anybody who has high blood sugar.
Okay.
So the nurses came back and asked him, how can we decide the dosage? Because each child, the activity is different, the nutrient needs are different. We have to individualize. How do we know how much to give? It is not one dose fits all.
Right.
So he went back, looked at his records, and he kept meticulous records. And he told the nurses, give enough to bring their blood sugar within normal limit.
Okay.
Which worked well for children. When Dr. Jocelyn's aunt came with high blood sugar, he injected her with insulin and the blood sugar went down.
Yes.
So he thought this is the same disease as in children, but starting at an older age. So he called it adult onset diabetes.
Right.
What he did not know at that time was adults at the time of high blood sugar, they have normal or even higher than normal levels of insulin in their body, in their blood.
Right. So doubling down doesn't really solve the situation.
Exactly. This is different from type 1, but he did not know because he had no way of knowing it. When that information became available, a diabetologist had a problem. If you have enough insulin in the body and the blood sugar is high, there is a problem here.
Well, we've been hearing the words insulin resistance of late.
Exactly. Why did they come up with that terminology? Not only that, they got it into medical textbooks so that everybody in the world will believe in it.
Well, the concept, as explained, would be the cells are refusing to accept the glucose regardless of the fact that there's insulin ringing the doorbell.
Okay. Which is the explanation.
Right. But is it the fact?
It is not the fact.
Aha.
Think about it. There are 50 hormones in the body, more
Right.
than 50. Why should the cells resist insulin?
No, they would have to be somehow the cell membrane would have to be broken. That's just not logical, is it?
It is not, because and they have no clue why it happens. And
Well, let me try and speculate. Tell me if I'm wrong. So if there is enough glucose in the cell already,
right,
it's almost like trying to pour more tea into a full cup. Regardless of how hard I try, I cannot make the cup any fuller.
Right.
Is that
That is a logical explanation. But if that is the case, the function of the cell cannot be disturbed. Then why did these children die by age 10?
all right? Okay.
Okay. And
Well,
if you look at the medical textbooks, there is no explanation why it happens.
all right.
Secondly, there are 200 different types of cell in the body,
Right.
but only 3 become resistant.
Okay.
Liver, liver, fat, and muscle.
Right.
Why?
Well, okay. I don't know enough. Maybe you can tell me.
The important thing is if these cells in these organs, by the way, there are 30 billion fat cells. Each cell is an individual living unit.
Right.
There are millions of liver cells and many thousands of muscle fibers, each one acting individually.
Right.
Who is coordinating the resistance? One morning, somebody decides and say, okay, from tomorrow, you're not going to respond to insulin. Why? There is no explanation.
Okay. Do you have one?
What I'm saying is the whole concept of insulin. Let me ask you one more question. Is there a test to measure the degree of insulin resistance in a person?
I'm not aware that there is one.
Exactly. Why is there no test? Because there is no such thing as insulin resistance. It is an explanation. It looks like the
All
cell
right.
is not responding.
Okay. So we are looking at the moon, and we have decided that the moon is
Flat.
flat. Yeah. It's
Because
cheap.
it looks like it is flat.
Or the sun is circling around the earth.
Right.
Yeah.
It's the same type of situation.
All right.
So, and they were talking about it for the last 80 years, long enough, loud enough, they spread the message, yet they don't have any proof as to the logic. Why should the body do this? And more importantly, what is the mechanism? You said initially that maybe there are enough glucose in the cell already,
Yeah.
which is a very logical explanation. But if that is the case, how do you know that cell is still resisting in spite of? And why did these children die if they have enough insulin, glucose inside? And then their lifespan became normal when they were given insulin.
Yes. Okay. Well, we definitely don't have a logical gap.
Right. So it was so illogical, but they covered it up and they spread the message. Now, supported by, of course, the pharmaceutical companies, because they found the number of adults with high blood sugar is increasing every year.
Right.
How can you not cater to their demands and needs when you have a good source of income from
Right.
that?
And so we have this conveyor belt which starts with methotrexate
Yeah.
and graduates into insulin. First it's oral, then it's injected, right?
Yes, yes.
All that.
The metformin became the largest selling drug in the world.
Right. Okay.
Glucophage or metformin. So if you have pneumonia, you have high fever.
All right.
If you control high fever, are you clearing pneumonia? Are you treating pneumonia?
No.
No. High blood sugar is only a symptom. You are controlling the symptom with insulin.
Right.
Can the doctor guarantee that if you control your blood sugar with insulin, you can prevent complications of diabetes?
Not for a moment.
No. That is when I was shocked. During my training, I found my own relative. Her husband was a medical college professor.
Mhm.
He kept her blood sugar normal with insulin religiously.
Yes.
And during my training, I suddenly heard the news that she was going to have a leg amputation.
Hmm.
That shocked me
Right.
because we were led to believe give insulin, control the blood sugar, you're going to be fine. So I expected her doctor will change the medication because insulin did not work.
It only worked for lowering the glucose.
Correct.
Yeah.
And the doctor not only did not change, but he increased the dose of insulin. And 2 years later, her other leg was amputated.
Well, if you yes, if you don't deal with the cause, uh, the progression continues.
And now they call it, oh, this is because not because the medication was not the right one, but because the disease is a progressive disease.
Okay. And your answer is the disease was never touched. You were only lowering the glucose.
Exactly.
All right.
Look at a young lady who had no family history of diabetes,
Yeah.
no previous history of diabetes, become diabetic during her pregnancy,
Right. Yeah. Gestational diabetes. Yeah.
gestational diabetes. And within days after giving birth to the child, the diabetes disappears.
Right.
So if it is a progressive disease, how can it disappear?
Yeah. The only thing I know is that her hormonal balances have changed.
Exactly. Or she is feeding herself, eating more
Okay.
than what she can spend. Remember the
Oh, yeah. The balance, inputs, outputs. Yeah.
right. So this is why I wrote the book Diabetes, the Real Cause and the Right Cure.
Aha. This is worth having. The world
Because
should be beating the a path to your door, right?
right. So the question is the simple question is if you don't put something in your mouth that is absorbed as glucose into the body, the blood
Yeah.
sugar cannot go up.
True enough, if you lower the glycemic index of your inputs, uh, the glucose will not be happening.
Right.
Yeah.
There is when you
We,
bring
we now have
glycemic,
we now have a movement on our hands, the carnivores.
yeah, there are two things. One is glycemic index, and the second is glycemic load.
Indeed.
So the glycemic index refers to the how fast the blood sugar will go up.
Yeah.
The glycemic load refers to the total amount of complex carbohydrate you are eating during that meal.
Yeah. One deals with quantity, the other one with quality of what you're putting in.
Right, exactly.
Mhm.
So when you eat, now let me ask a question. In nature, can you think of a food that from which adult humans can get nutrients from without chewing? A food source.
Orange juice?
Does nature produce orange juice?
No, no, it puts out oranges.
Yeah.
Okay.
No, nature produces and
Okay.
packages everything.
All right. So I can perhaps drink some cow's blood, like the Maasai do in Africa.
There you go. But that's not a common meal for everybody.
No, that's not very common. But
Okay.
yeah, you need to chew stuff.
Why? Why did nature put everything in containers? The shape may be different, the color may be different, the taste may be different, but it still requires chewing. Unless you take honey as an example, everything else requires chewing.
Right. Okay.
So
Well,
when you
so number one, this would have to be to get the saliva and the amylase into the initial stage of the digestive process, no?
exactly, but even before that, there is a along with that, if you chew it, then the release of nutrients is more favorable for the receptors in the mouth to identify.
Interesting concept. So it, in fact, is an analytical information system that tells us what's coming.
Exactly.
Huh.
The brain needs to know. For example, let me give you another example. Suppose you are thirsty right now.
All right.
Can you predetermine how much water will it take to quench your thirst?
Not readily, no.
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 Suppose I
Take
bring,
another sip.
correct. You have a sip and your thirst is quenched.
Yeah.
It took how much time? A few seconds to sip it.
Yeah, and actually the response is nearly immediate.
Immediate. Even though the water is still in your stomach, it has not been absorbed into the body yet.
Mhm.
How did the brain know you had enough? If you have had a workout on a hot day, you'll drink more.
Okay, yeah, it's all happening in the mouth. Have to hand you that.
Exactly. It is happening with the receptors in the mouth. They not only identify what you are drinking, whether it is water, tea, beer, milk,
All right.
whiskey.
So this will be a wonderful story or commercial for chewing thoroughly and thoughtfully.
Exactly.
Hmm.
You take it and be mindful of what is in your
Right.
mouth.
Because
Take the,
if I guzzle it in large chunks,
uh,
no information is extracted. It just goes down, right?
exactly. So, how much can you chew rice? How much can you chew bread, pasta, cake, cupcake, cook? So, once you stop chewing, you swallow.
Yes.
So, the speed of eating has gone up or faster. We eat faster. That's the number one cause of excess food intake, obesity, overweight, and obesity.
Look at that. The Poothullil rule. The weight gain is inversely proportional to the number of chews a person takes eating.
Exactly.
We should put it in a book.
Right. Yeah. All you have to do is look at toddlers, 2 to 6 years of age.
All right.
And you will observe three things. One, they will not eat unless they are hungry, no matter how much food is in the house. Second, grandma or mom will make a number of food items, but the child will pick and choose what the child enjoys. And once the child is satisfied, the child could care less how much is left on the plate.
Yeah, when finished is finished is finished. Yeah.
Right. So we all grew up just like that. The child decided what to eat, when to eat, how much to eat, and grows up normally.
So what do
Why?
you do? What do you do with the children who are not eating enough and are clearly not gaining weight or clearly not growing? Is that a neurological dysregulation?
This is something to do with with the control mechanism or the sensory mechanism or the control mechanism, or sometimes the children not having access to the right food from which the child can get the needed nutrients from.
Meaning the stuff that's on the plate is not attractive?
Right.
Okay.
If the child's body needs something else, let me give you a different way of looking at it.
All right.
Suppose we go to a buffet, 100 items.
Mm,
How many would you choose for lunch?
yeah, 5, 6.
5, 6, based on what?
Uh, appeal, smell,
Based on
something
your
is something's
right,
going to tell me.
correct.
Intuitive,
Based on your previous experience of those foods.
probably. Yeah.
Most likely. Maybe one or two you may experiment, but mostly. And we sit down, we enjoy it. Suppose we go back to the same buffet in the evening for supper. Will you take exactly the 5 or 6 that you enjoyed for lunch?
Very likely not.
Not. Why?
Okay, variety calls.
You
The
need,
body knows.
you think you need variety. But where did that thought process come from?
It's intuitive. It's not thought through.
What is happening is nutrients extracted from the food you had for lunch, they are still enough of them still in the body, but the brain has received information from various organs and cells that what they need now.
Yeah.
And the subconscious mind keeps an inventory of foods that you have consumed earlier in your life. Which one will have the nutrients that your body needs now?
Yeah.
And send a message to the conscious brain, okay, the other one look more appealing now. I need variety, I need this. And it's very simple. It is a physiological phenomenon. And you think, oh, you are so smart. You can take the nutrients that you need from that food, this food, not from the other that you enjoyed during lunchtime.
Right on. Okay. Very good.
So your brain is keeping tab of every cell using the nutrients. And when the total deficit reaches a threshold level, that is when the brain creates the sensation of hunger.
All right. So, would you say that if you present greater variety, like more complex salads or more complex meals, that you will probably take longer between meals?
Yes, you can. But you have to pay attention to the enjoyment part.
Yeah.
And then people have done studies where they put people in a cave, no exposure to sunlight,
Okay.
and their duration of not feeling hunger is proportional to the quantity and variety they take each
All
meal.
right. Interesting. Okay. So we understand it. So, recommendation to the mothers: make variety.
Right.
So interestingly, autistic children are usually fixated on one food. Like I remember stories with a desperate mother buying up all of the cinnamon flavored, uh, what were they called? Some kind of a pancake or whatever that was pre-made because that was the only one food that her child was willing to eat.
Well, on the other hand, what we are doing is the everything the human system is designed with a vegetarian diet in mind, our long intestine, our but that doesn't mean you cannot feed an animal the vegetables and eat the animal flesh.
Right. Yes.
You are essentially processing it through an animal.
Yeah. It's been processed for you. Yes.
So different ways, as long as you get the nutrients that you need, what the source is makes no difference.
Yeah.
In the world, there are people, humans living up to 80, 90, 100 years, eating a different variety of food that is accessible locally.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So I have a thought. There must be some relationship between the inner terrain, the microbiome,
Yes.
the inputs, right?
Oh, absolutely. If you don't protect your microbiome, you are done. You are in big trouble
All right.
because 90% of the neurochemicals that allows neurons to talk to each other,
Mm.
the base material comes from the gut biome.
Okay. So the dopamine, serotonin, all the signaling,
Yes,
that's all bugs talking.
right.
Yes. Okay.
So you need to protect your guests in your intestine. They are your guests. They are contributors,
Yeah.
symbiotic existence. You take care of them, they will take care of you.
All right. So I'm taking you off topic by switching the topics, but you were talking about the inputs, right?
Right.
So the choices of inputs and the timing of the inputs and the variety of the inputs and the chewing of the inputs, and now finally what?
If we can do that, the benefit is your body you're taking holistically rather than one symptom or one illness.
Right.
You have to be mindful of what you eat, how much you eat, when you eat, based on your own. Nobody can give you a fixed diet and say, okay, this is good for you for the rest of your life.
Sure enough,
You,
variety is important.
but not only variety, you have to be mindful of what you eat, how much you eat, when do you stop eating.
Okay.
You can start, as we said, when the threshold of nutrient demand reaches a threshold level.
All right. So, are you going to actually answer the question that's hidden in your book about the true cause of high blood glucose levels?
I'm glad you asked. The, the biggest user of glucose in the body is muscles in the
Yeah,
body. They
the
spend
brain and the muscles, yes.
muscle, brain, heart, muscle, liver, okay, or red blood cell. But muscle is the most that
By
uses
far.
the maximum amount or produces the maximum amount of energy.
Yes.
Our muscle is like a hybrid car, hybrid engine.
All right.
A hybrid engine uses electricity or gasoline to create power.
Yes.
Muscles can use either fatty acid or glucose.
Yes.
Now, in order to get the glucose in, the cell has to do some work, spend some energy, send a glucose transporter. When the doorbell is rung by insulin, the transporter, it opens the door, loads up glucose and things. So it has to spend some energy.
Yes.
Whereas fatty acids, since the cell wall is made of fatty acid and cholesterol, the fatty acid can get in more easily.
Indeed.
If fatty acid is readily available, then the muscles are programmed to switch to fatty acid usage more than using glucose.
Really, I didn't know that. So this is
Yeah,
actually a preferential energy input, yeah?
right.
Uh-huh. All right.
Preferential uh, fuel usage.
All right.
In fact, 80% of the energy or the calories that you spend every day comes from fatty acid, not from glucose.
All right. So the famous ketogenic diet comes to mind, yes?
Exactly. So we are designed like that because sometimes you may not have access to food readily all the time. But you can still no look at a marathon runner who runs for 6, 7, 8 hours non-stop. How can muscles keep producing energy?
They can.
And by the way, most of us do exercise not when the blood sugar is high, but in between meals when the blood sugar is low.
Yes.
So, how do you produce the energy? It comes from fatty acid.
All right.
Now, where do the fatty acid come from? The main thing is the food you eat, of course, but then you have fat cells that store the excess energy that you consumed but did not spend before the next meal.
Right.
They are stored. And imagine if the fat stores are full. By the way, each of us inherit a certain amount of fat storage capacity from our ancestors, from our parents,
Mm-hmm.
and based on your ethnicity, it is variable. It is not everybody does not have the same amount of fat storage capacity.
All right.
If you inherit a large fat storage capacity, you can store a lot of fat. You may look big, but your blood sugar will be normal.
Okay. Got it.
If you are a lean person, like people from Asia, mostly for generations they have been lean, or if the young lady who has never been diabetic but become gestational diabetic, If the fat capacity, storage capacity is filled up, then the fatty acid you absorbed after a meal stays in the blood,
All right.
and the muscles switch to fatty acid burning, leaving glucose in the blood.
Yes.
So the real cause of high blood sugar is not insulin resistance, but the easy availability of the fatty acid. It is called the fatty acid burn theory.
Interesting. Okay. Do you distinguish between monos, unsaturated, polyunsaturated, saturated? Do you care which is which in those?
Those are the individual ingredients of different formulations of fat that the body needs. Cholesterol, for example, it needs more saturated fat, but the muscles use unsaturated fat. It is the quantity.
Right. Okay. So I guess the bane of our existence then would be the plant seed oils.
Say that again.
The plant seed oils, like the corn oil and cotton seed oil and those sort of things.
They are good because the polyunsaturated fatty acids that sustain a potential life inside that seed is for food.
All
So
right.
yes, what I tell people is try to eat 3 different vegetables, 3 different fruits, and 3 different nuts every day.
All right.
And you get the variety you need, and you can supplement that with non-vegetarian items. There's no problem there.
Yes.
The best example is the Native Americans, when they were brought to the reservations in the year 1900.
Mhm.
They practically had no type 2 diabetes or cancer.
Yes.
The adult population, age 80 plus, were higher per 100,000 population compared to the white Americans living in the same area. Yet they did not have practically no type 2 diabetes or cancer. Now, 50% of the adults, Pima Indians in Pima, they are diabetic.
Right. Well, that has to do with switching the diet from the ancestors and they're eating incompatible foods.
Correct. What is the biggest switch they had? They moved during the traditional lifestyle, they moved from one food source to another.
Yeah. I think this was the buffalo eaters eating corn chips now, right?
Right. Right. So what did they not eat in their natural habitat?
Grains.
Grains. They never stayed in one place to cultivate grains.
Right.
And in fact, humans are not designed to eat grains because otherwise we would have had beaks to pick them up and the ability to digest the chaff.
Okay. That's a beautiful explanation. If you were supposed to be eating grains, you would have a beak.
Right.
I love it. Okay.
Right. So the Native Americans ate wild corn. Every government in the world subsidizing grain
Right,
farming.
of course. Yeah. They were hunter-gatherers.
After the
They were
agricultural
not
revolution.
agriculturalists.
And every marketing company, food marketing company is processing and the industrial
cheap,
revolution
highly
that
processed
made
foods,
possible
very convenient,
to
very
they
tasty,
cultivate
very
grains
attractive
in
to look at,
abundance and harvest them,
forcing
milling
an
and
increased
refining,
consumption of complex
and the
carbohydrates coming from
promotion
grains.
by the
It is easy to eat,
food
less
industry.
chewing.
Of course, yeah. There are
Quantities
financial
increase,
interests
the
driving
total
these.
amount
Yeah.
of food energy is higher,
Everywhere
mostly
in the
coming
world,
from complex
governments
carb,
are subsidizing grain
driving
farming.
the obesity
All
and
right.
And
They
the
do.
epidemic.
I think they
cons-
call it a strategic
next is
reserve
the
because it's much
cancer
easier to
epidemic,
store a
and
bushel
after
of
that
grain
we
than
will
it
have
is,
the
I don't
dementia
know, a bushel of
and
broccoli.
Alzheimer's
and
epidemic.
everywhere
Right.
in the
All
world,
of which
the
is,
incidence of
as you're
obesity and
saying,
type 2 diabetes
related
is
to
increasing.
oversized input of carbohydrates. Yeah.
complex
And the
carbohydrates
biggest
from
increase,
grains,
top
and
three countries
overall
are
increased
India,
intake of
China,
total
and the
food
United
energy
States, with
on
the
a daily
largest number of
basis.
them.
All right. And so you have a book about that.
Yes, I have book about cancer, and then the new book that I just released is to
Yeah.
prevent.
Yes.
Each time I give a talk, people will ask, "What can I eat? How can I prevent?" Because there is a family history of diabetes,
Yes.
and the doctors have convinced people if you have a family history, that is your fate.
Yeah, that's just incorrect. We know that.
Genes give you the potential.
Yes,
Not genes are not your fate.
exactly.
So if we can prevent it, we are spending over $1 billion a day in the United States to take care of people with obesity and diabetes related health
Right.
problems.
Well, we also spend a whole lot of money subsidizing the grain farmers.
Yes, exactly. We spend $25 billion in farm subsidy and spend 8 times that to treat the complications from that.
Right. And we also spend money on food stamps, which are favoring the food made by these grain producers.
Exactly.
So it's compounding itself like it's you couldn't made it worse if you tried.
Exactly. And I don't know how I tried to contact NIH and Health and Human Services, but then they check with the endocrinologists who say, "Oh, there's insulin resistance. What do you do?"
Right. Okay. And so your answer is lower the intake of grains.
Yes, when an Australian researcher in 1970s took 10 Aborigines with type 2 diabetes on metformin, asked them to go to the ancestral way of living in the jungle.
Yes.
Within 8 weeks, they lost weight, they stopped their diabetic medication, their blood sugar came down to normal.
Yes. Okay. Okay. Clear.
So the reason is in the urban life, their complex carbohydrate related energy intake, food energy intake on a daily basis was over 50 to 70%.
Yeah.
In the ancestral way of living,
Yeah.
it was less than 35%
Okay.
daily.
All right. There's the answer.
That is all you have to do. Cut down the grain eating, and that will also cut down the total energy intake on a daily basis. And you have control of your body and your blood sugar.
All right. Fantastic. Okay. So where do people get their hands on your books?
My website is drjohnonhealth.com, and the books are available on Amazon. And if your local food store doesn't get it, tell them to get it.
Yeah, that's a good line.
Yeah.
Dr.
And
John on Health. That's
yes,
DrJohnOnhealth.com. So
okay,
just the words, Dr. John on Health.
right. See, one thing people don't realize is people who don't have diabetes or obesity problem, they think, "Oh, it does not affect me." That is not right, because the insurance companies have to take care of the people who are having issues with diabetes and its complications. So what happens to the premium of even people who don't have diabetes?
They pay more.
They go up.
Yes, absolutely.
So if you don't ask questions, if you don't tell your congressmen and senators, why are you subsidizing grain farming and paying for it? Medicare and Medicaid are going to go bankrupt. And the best way to save it is to prevent this from happening.
Yeah.
And that can be done cheaper than treating.
Isn't that something? Well, it's in the lobby. It's the money that's being spent to affect the message. I remember hearing the president just recently saying, "But we love our farmers. We're going to make sure that our farmers don't suffer."
Right.
In fact, the best statement would be, "Please convince the farmers to grow vegetables."
And fruits and nuts.
Okay. Yes.
We need to reallocate the farm subsidy,
Yes. Change the picture.
change the formula. And for that, it is the duty of the Congress.
Right.
And so we need to ask questions. We need to push the legislatures to at least ask some questions.
Yes. All right. This has been super interesting, very educational, and very enlightening. I so appreciate meeting you. This is Dr. John Poothullil and his books.
Yeah, I hope our listeners, they will start thinking, and if it makes sense to them, they should start asking questions, because our pocketbook depends on it. Or is this our pocketbook or that of the the industry, food industry, whichever.
Yeah, the financial health of our children is
Right.
dependent on the decisions that we make now.
All right, exactly.
I so appreciate this. So it's a message that is so timely and so very much needed.
Thank you.
Yeah. All right. Dr. John on health. And this is Martin Pytela for Life Enthusiast, life-enthusiast.com. Thank you for being here, and thank you for listening to us.
I thank the audience. I thank you for having me. And all you have to remember is we all enjoy eating, but really enjoy what you eat.
Yeah, indeed. Smaller portion, chew longer, skip the grains.
Exactly. You got it.
All right. Thank you so very much.
Hey. Hey.